What is ethical investing? So if you are an investor, then this is a topic you will be really interested in. Hello, I'm Charlotte Jessup and welcome to the Looking After Your Pennies YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about ethical investing, why you need to think about it and what it means for your investment strategy. Now before I start, let me remind you that I am not here to tell you where to invest, and your investments can go down as well as up, so you need to think about this carefully. What I am here to do is tell you what ethical investing is and why more and more people are thinking about it. I will also tell you what things you need to look into and what things you might want to consider if you want to build a more ethical portfolio. Now, more and more of us are becoming conscious about where we spend our money. We choose certain establishments, certain retailers, because they are more aligned to our own morals and of our visions of what we would like the world to be in the future. Now, when we are investing, we are choosing to purchase a part of a company or loan our money to a certain organisation, and if those organisations aren't in line with our morals, then essentially we are going against some of our beliefs. And actually what we want to do is make sure that the money that we are investing in companies is going to the companies that are aligned with how we feel about the world. So ethical investing is a big part of that, and it extends broadly across issues to do with the environment, social issues, and how companies treat their employees and their communities as well. So this covers a very broad range of issues. Now, for some of us, we don't want our money going to companies that are involved in the tobacco industry or supplying weapons or creating weapons, gambling, or those that are polluting the environment. So actually, when it comes to choosing our investments, there is a lot of things that we need to think about. Now, one thing to note here is that everybody's ethical varies. So some people might be happy to support tobacco companies as long as they aren't putting a load of rubbish into the ocean, whereas other people might be very passionate about social issues and not so much interested in environmental issues. So we have to consider that there is not a one size fits all when it comes to ethical investing, and this is why you need to do your own research on the matter so that you can find investments and funds that suit your own situation and your own set of beliefs. There are different options available to you, and I will talk you through the different strategies that you can use to pick a more ethical portfolio for your investments. There are a few things you can do. So the first one is to pick individual stocks in certain companies. Now, there might be some companies that you really want to support, in which case you can choose to invest your money in those companies. Now, this is going to take more research. You're going to need to dive into which companies are most ethical and most aligned with your values. And you're also going to look at whether that's actually a worthwhile investment. So there are two sides to this coin. Actually, whether a company is ethical and also whether they're going to give you the kind of return that you are hoping for on your investment. So this is likely to be a lot of work for you, and it is also likely to be a slightly more risky strategy. Because you're working with individual stocks, there is the chance that they are more volatile. You don't quite know what's going to happen to that one company. And if you are going to build an entire portfolio where you're invested in many companies, you're going to have to repeat this over and over again for those companies and find ones that align with your values and do the research around those and then decide whether they are something you want to invest in. So it's going to be time consuming and has the potential for higher risk as well. Your next option with this is to look for socially responsible investing. Now, this is a term that is used in the industry where funds are screening out the worst players in this field. So there are obviously some companies and organisations that are not doing a lot to be environmentally friendly or work on social issues or actually support their employees. So what these funds will do is they will remove the worst offenders and will not invest in those companies. So rather than actually looking at the champions in the field, they just take out the worst. And they tend to go for investing in companies that are trying their hardest. They will try and work with companies that are looking to make improvements, and they will work alongside them to get to these results. So it's not necessarily the best, and they may still invest in some of the companies and industries that you are trying to avoid. So it's worth looking at these funds carefully. For example, they might work with gambling companies, but those companies might actually be environmentally friendly. So they are still included in those funds. So you will have to look in detail to see if there's something that you could work with. But actually, the benefit of this is that you could still get a fairly good return on your investment because it is a more inclusive strategy and doesn't eliminate too many potential investments. But it might not be the most ethical choice for your money. Now, the third option is to go for ESG funds. So this stands for environmental, social and governance. And there is a whole scoring system for this. Now, these funds are working with some of the best in these categories. They work with the companies that are doing good things for the environment. They are working to tackle social issues, both in their industries, their fields, and out in the wider world. And they are also known for their governance. So this is how the CEOs and the top bosses are paid, and is it linked to their performance. It also looks at how they treat employees and pay structures, and they are scored according to this. And funds that are ESG funds look at taking the highest scoring companies in these categories and include those. So it's unlikely to include some of the worst offenders because they will not score highly on these three aspects. So this is kind of as good as it gets in terms of investing funds, but it will exclude kind of larger companies or some companies that could get you better returns. So the trade-off on this is that you will get some of the most ethical companies, but there is the potential, and this is not necessarily saying that this is what will happen, but there is the potential that it will exclude some companies that give you a good return on your investment. So those are your options around looking at ethical investing. Now, they each have their advantages and disadvantages, but I thought it would be interesting to look at what the advantages and disadvantages are of ethical investing overall. Now, if you're someone who is passionate about putting your money into organisations that are doing good things for the world around you, then this might be a simple choice. And actually, it could be your only choice when it comes to investing. But it is worth weighing up what you can achieve when you are ethically investing with what could be at stake by making that choice too. So let's look at the advantages first. So aside from the moral benefits of choosing to ethically invest, there are some other benefits too. So this includes the fact that these industries, those that are the most ethical, are some of the industries and the companies that are getting the most support at the moment. There is a huge surge around making conscious choices with our money, and actually more and more people are choosing to put their monies into their companies, both in kind of a retail level and also on an investment level. So there is the potential that these companies could see good, solid growth in the future. There is also the fact that there are lots of government subsidies around companies that are doing good things in the world. So actually, with this extra kind of government funding and support, these companies could be considered to be in a more stable financial position, which means that they could reduce the risk on your investment. And given that these companies are built around sustainability, that's a good thing when it comes to investment. We want companies that are going to be around for the long term. So any company that has sustainability as part of its ethos and its vision is looking long term rather than short term. And when it comes to investments, we want to start thinking about the long term gains that we can get out of this. And we want these companies to be around for a while. So that could be a real benefit to choosing ethical companies or ethical industries to invest in. And it's worth noting at this point that one article showed that in all areas, ethical investment funds were outperforming traditional funds. And that is quite interesting because what we are looking at is a situation where we can almost see the proof that people want to invest in ethical companies and they are growing well. So you could actually find yourself in a position where you are getting a better return on your investment by choosing to invest ethically. Now, there are some disadvantages, and what I've just said could kind of negate some of these things, but it is worth considering, given that any past performance doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see the same in the future. So one thing we need to consider is that by choosing only ethical companies, you could run the risk of reducing the amount of diversity in your portfolio. And those who are familiar with the world of investing know that when it comes to building your portfolio, diversification creates safety and balance, and it helps reduce the risks. So we want to create profiles that are diverse. And if we are eliminating whole sectors and whole industries, and even just individual companies, you could find yourself with a less diverse portfolio. Given that this is also a kind of growing sector of the investment market, the chances are you're going to have limited fund options. So I'm going to talk about a few funds that are available in a minute. Actually, these are not as easy to find as traditional funds that include these less ethical sectors. So you have less choices around socially responsible investments and ESG investments at this present time, but we could see that flip in the future. There is also the potential for slower growth. So you might see these industries growing at a slower rate just by their nature. But that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, as if we're looking to invest in the long term, growth over the long term is the key factor rather than the rate at which they grow. And it's only the potential. So yes, they might grow slower and that could be one of their disadvantages, but it's important to kind of look at the whole picture and the long-term effects. Another thing to consider is that these funds typically have higher fees. Now, the reason they have higher fees is because they take more effort to choose the companies and the stocks that are involved in these funds. And it takes a lot of work to make sure that these funds are scoring highly on ethical issues. And that is what attracts the higher fees. And when it comes to investing, the fees are important because that is your money that you are giving away. And as your money grows, this equates to bigger and bigger amounts. So it's one thing to consider that you might be paying more for choosing these types of funds. So that's a decision you're going to have to weigh up. I've given you the advantages and the disadvantages, and I've given you some options around what you can do if you want to invest ethically. Now, where can you go to look for ethical investments? Now, the majority of investment platforms and apps and websites and banks and any sort of investing platform have considered that this is such a huge priority for many of us in our lives now. And you are likely to find ethical options on the majority of platforms. I have a few examples that I can give you today if you're looking for places to go. Now, these aren't recommendations for you. These are just suggestions of places you can look if you want to find out more information, or if you're looking to have some examples of different funds or places where you can go to just get an idea of what is available out there. So first up, a couple of apps for you. The first one is Moneybox. They offer a socially responsible fund that has ESG scoring. So Moneybox is an app and you can start investing with small amounts, and you can choose to put your money into this socially responsible fund. You'll need to have a look to see if that fund works for you and your risk level, but you can do it through an app and they make it super easy to invest. You can also open a stocks and shares ISA, so you get the benefits of tax-free investing. It's a good way to get started with ethical investing because you can start with small amounts. There is also an app called Ticker. These pride themselves on ethical investing. It is the basis of what they do. Again, it is an app and all of their investment options are ethical. They are focused around environmental and social issues. So if you are looking for something where it's not complicated to go out and start investing ethically, then that might be the place for you to start. It's one to look into along with some of these other options, but it is considered an easy go-to when it comes to ethical investing. Another app that is a great place to start is Wealthify. Again, you can start investing with these with small amounts of money, and they actually have 5 ethical funds available. You will need to have a read through of these different funds and see if they work for you and which ones align with what you want to achieve. But it's a great app, really simple to use, and it makes ethical investing have a bit more flexibility because you have those choices available. Now, if you are looking for a website or a more well-known investing platform, so my personal investment platform that I use for my stocks and shares ISA is Vanguard, and they do have some ESG ethical fund choices. When I checked today, there are a couple of options available, so that's definitely something you can look into if you want to choose Vanguard as your investment platform. So that's it. That's ethical investing. There should be lots of information here for you to go and research and find what is right for you. I hope I've given you lots of information and lots of food for thought on this topic. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. Thank you so much for coming along, and I'll see you in another video.